Okay, so this is going to be your introduction to ZBrush. It is, like I said before in my previous video, it's my favorite, hands down, one of my favorite programs I've ever used. Just a little bit of information with me. I do a lot of character modeling for the short films I work on, and then I do a lot of 3D printing. That's kind of my side business. So a lot of my modeling for my 3D printing, and then also my character modeling is done entirely in ZBrush. My experience with ZBrush goes back a fair amount. It's actually about 10 years that I've been working in ZBrush, and it's evolved quite a bit. It's a really, really cool program. I will admit the interface is really kind of lopsided at first once you get into it. It's not user friendly. At least I don't feel like it is. I feel like it could be better. But once you get used to it, it's actually a lot of fun to work with, and it feels really natural, okay, to work with, because it's meant to be like digital clay. So ZBrush is a sculpting program first and foremost. It's meant to be a sculpting program. It's not really intended for much past that. It does do texturing, like you can actually do what's called poly painting on these models, and it's really fun to kind of to paint on them, to do texture painting. Excuse me. But it's can be a bit janky. But once you get into SLR, I'll go over that and talk to you about it. So we're not really worried about poly painting in this class. But anyway, the modeling, you can see on the photos, it's really, really good. Just hands down, it's really fun. But let's go and talk about the interface. So when you fire up ZBrush, you're going to see a lot of buttons. You'll see right here, you'll see, this big open tray. This is called the light box. Inside of the light box, you can open up demo files and look at all of this different stuff. But what you can also do is if ZBrush crashes, which it's known to do, it's not as bad as it used to be, but you can access what's called your quick saves. And so if you go over to quick save, you'll see, basically every quick save that my computer has saved. And yeah, so you can open up past files, or past quick saves, I should say. These are not saved files, and I would not use ZBrush to quick save things permanently. It's actually kind of like a rolling walkway or escalator, where the older stuff, once it reaches a limit, it'll delete it, and then the newer stuff just kind of like moves back in the timeline. So quick save is really useful if something like goes janky, because then you can just reopen ZBrush and reopen your quick save. But anyway, so get rid of Lightbox, click Lightbox. So up here, let's just kind of talk about maybe going through and like making something real quick. So ZBrush, if you go over here to the right-hand side, you'll see where it says Tool, and then you have options for like opening up files. So ZBrush has what's called, it actually works with a couple of different file formats, and like one of them is called a Z project file, and that's almost kind of like a Photoshop file. And then it has what's called a ztool.ztl that you can load in through here, and that's kind of like just one. Well, it gets confusing. Let's just leave it at this. The load in files, you're going to go to load, and then you can load in if you have like a previously saved file, and you'll see it pop in right here, but it's not on your canvas. So what you actually have to do is you have to draw it onto your canvas, and then you'll hit edit, and then you can rotate around. So that's pretty cool. But if we want to start something fresh, I'm going to go over here and you'll see these different options. These are your current Z tools. So think of these as like open documents in Photoshop. So this is a document, this will be a document, this is a document, this is a document, and this is a document. Whatever the biggest one is the current active document. If it's in like, you know, the first position, this is exactly what it is, okay? That's the one you're working on. If you want to switch over, you can use, you know, one of the primitives, but if you want to go back to a previous document, it's going to be right here, okay? So anyway, if you want to go ahead and just kind of fire up just a primitive, just any just normal primitive, I'll be honest, usually I'll actually start off with a sphere, and yeah, it's, you know, pretty easy. That's your sphere. If you click on it, you can actually just click and drag and rotate around. If you hit F, it will center and frame it. If you hold down Shift, you'll see it'll snap to a view. You know, notice like this little head right here will actually show you, you know, which side you're looking at. This is kind of similar to like Maya, how they have that little box up in the corner. So you can actually rotate the head around, and you'll see it actually rotates the model a little bit, which is kind of cool. So if you can't, you know, rotate this for any reason, you can rotate this and it'll rotate it for you. It also kind of gives you an idea of like what the front axis is that you should be modeling off of if you're doing a character. So model, you know, something with the face facing you. That'll let you know which axis you should be working with. So just FYI. If you want to start sculpting on something, you'll need to hit Make Polymesh 3D. You'll see it actually pops it down, makes a new subtool. And then once you click, you'll see you're actually able to sculpt. Because before, when I was clicking and dragging, it actually really wasn't doing that. It wasn't actually sculpting anything. But if I switch over to the PM3D sphere, you'll see that I can now sculpt. If you hold down Alt and left mouse drag, hold down the left mouse button and drag, you'll see we can actually move the object on the camera or on the canvas. If we release Alt while I'm dragging with the left mouse button, you'll see I can zoom in and out. And then I can hold down Shift and snap it to different views. Control Z, obviously I can undo. And then you'll see up here, you'll see these little dashes. You'll see it says undo history, 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10. So these are actually little tick marks that you can actually go from one point in history to another, which is actually kind of useful. So that's pretty cool. I really like that. Now, just FYI, if you go back in time on your history and then you start messing with the model again, you'll see it actually deleted all the tick marks, but then it starts making new ones. Okay. Over here is your brush palette. You have a ton of different brushes. I recommend you guys check these all out. There's probably over 100 of them, couple, you know, maybe 150 of them at this point. They're all really, really cool. They all have different uses. I kind of switch between when I'm doing character modeling. It really kind of depends on what I want to use or what I'm trying to do. But you can use things like clay tubes, and that kind of builds up with kind of a rectangular pattern to it. You can use something like just regular clay. It's a little more blobby. And if you have a Wacom tablet, it actually does impact, or it does actually sculpt or add onto the sphere, depending on the pressure of your Wacom pin is pressing down on the screen. So that's pretty useful. Right now I'm just using a mouse, but you get the idea. Up here you have ZAdd and ZSub. If you switch over from ZAdd to ZSub, that will actually dig into the model. And then you have a hotkey. If you want to switch, you can hold down Alt. You'll see a little minus pop up next to the cursor. And when you hold it down, it actually will dig in, and then release. It will add. It will add material, which is pretty cool. If you hold down Shift, you'll see it turns blue, and that actually smooths. It actually smooths the model out for you, which is nice. You can go up here to draw size, make it bigger, smaller, whatever you want to do. If you go to Z intensity, that's going to be the strength of the brush. So if you go all the way up to 100, you'll see it adds up pretty quickly. If you go down to like 1, it's going to barely do anything. And then you have something called focal shift, which is actually, if you look at the cursor, it has a center ring and an outer ring. The focal shift will change the diameter of the center ring to where it might be closer or further away in diameter to the outer ring, which means basically it's going to be the flow of the brush. So how close or how approximate to the alpha that you're actually sculpting with is what the focal shift is going to do. So if I go bring it up to 100, you bring that intensity up, you'll see it's going to be a pretty stark shape right here. If I bring the focal shift all the way up to 100 on the other side, you'll see it's going to be really, really light. Let me bring it up a little bit more. So you see that? So that's the same Z intensity, but 2 different focal shifts. This one gives you a really kind of soft rise in the clay that's been added onto the sphere, where the focal shift, if you turn it down into the negative range, it's going to give you something very, very similar to like a plateau. Okay. You'll see right here, I've been talking about alphas and the brushes. So every single brush has what's called a stroke type. So stroke type, there's going to be a standard one set for each one of the brushes, but you can change it based on your needs. So freehand, it's just going to be real standard, just kind of dragging the brush across the surface. Color spray is going to be basically just smattering the brush, almost like spray paint, onto the surface. Color spray and spray are basically the same thing. Color spray you can work with if you're doing poly painting. Drag dot is going to be something that you can like drag, like say a symbol or a stamp or something across the screen or across the model and stamp it on. And then you'll see drag rectangle. And that means you can drag it and just kind of resize it. Just like that. So that's pretty cool. You'll see here where it says alpha. Let me go back to here. I'm just going to undoing this so I have a nice clean sphere. You'll see alpha right here. So this is going to be the stamp. If we had like a mask or something like that, it puts a stamp on the brush. So let's do something simple. Let's do the donut. So I have a donut right here. So if I click and drag this, you'll see that alpha kind of came in. We kind of can see the shape right there. Sorry if you can hear my son crying in the background. It is his bedtime and he does not agree with that. So Z intensity, yeah, there we go. So you can see that alpha shape mimicked right here, where the darker area is going to be where the material is not being pulled up or even pushed in. It could be actually being pushed in. And then the lighter area is going to be where the material is building up. So these alphas are actually really useful. These are just 2D images, just to be honest with you. There's nothing really special about these images other than the fact they're just black and white. You can technically take any image in, any image you can find and use it as an alpha. If you wanted to import something in, you can just open up your alpha palette and go down to import and import something in and use it as an alpha. So this is useful, if you want to do something like tree bark, you can actually go out and take photos of trees. If you want to do like lizard skin, if you want to do human skin, any sort of texture like cracked rock, really anything, you can use as an alpha. It works best though when it is a black and white image that probably has had the contrast pulled up a little bit so you can see more of the detail. And it's really easy just to kind of bring in real life detail into these sculpts. So it's really useful. And I encourage you guys to go out and seek and find your own alphas to use. And if you get into it, you can actually kind of make your own alpha folder, which I have a folder of just a ton of alphas I've found or I've made over the past decade. And it makes it really easy for me to make alien skin or monster skin or zombies or something like that. So it's pretty useful. Okay. Texture. So texture is if you're going to be painting a model, you can use textures and apply them to them. So if you're going to be adding color or something, you can do that. So let me turn off the Z add. Just leave on. All right, you can see right here. Let me turn it on like that. So our resolution for our image is really, really low. Let me do this. There you go. So you can actually technically just go ahead and paint directly on the model. And this is also a really nice tool. This allows us to use photos to paint directly onto a model. So if you want to do like, I don't know, Barack Obama, you could take a photo of his face and, put it directly to a sculpt, which is kind of cool. Down here is material. This really has nothing to do with, when we take this into like Maya. This is just fun to look at. It also can be nice to make it easier for you to view details if you need to. The standard one is a red wax, which is adequate. I'll be honest though, I think it's kind of annoying to look at continuously. So I will usually switch over to a matte cap white. The matte cap white is really useful because I feel like when I'm doing poly painting on a model, it gives me much more accurate colors to what the actual color map is going to come out looking like versus, tinting it red with the red wax. Because when you actually export the map, it's not going to be tinted red like this. That's just the material. But, if you want something that's like skin, it might give you kind of an idea of what it might look like as a skin shader. But again, that's not really the point of the class. We're here for sculpting, not for texturing, but you get the idea. So in general, I will probably switch over to a matte cap white, especially if I'm going to be texturing in ZBrush. So anyway, that's that. Right here is the color picker. Just FYI, if your color changes for whatever reason, you probably accidentally change the color on your color picker. You can always just put it back to white and your material will go back to white. So FYI. If you find that you can't sculpt, but you can put color on a model, it's probably because you have RGB turned on and Z add is not turned on. Usually when I'm sculpting, I have RGB turned off, and I will have Z-add turned on. So I don't usually run into a place where I'm going to have both of these turned on. Usually I'm just going to have one of these turned on and the other one's turned off. So yeah. Okay. What's next? Let's go down to subtool. So right here, subtool is, think of it as layers in a Photoshop document. So how I talked about how each one of these Z tools is a different open document in Photoshop, where they don't actually cross over, but you can copy and paste elements from one to the other, but you don't view them at the same time. A subtool is like a layer. You can have multiple objects that work together as different subtools, so maybe like a jacket on top of a character, but it's not the same mesh. Okay, they're actually not part of the same contiguous mesh. So subtools, you can do a couple different things with these. Really quick, easy way to make one is if you want to go down to append, you can go to, append, let's append a cylinder. And now you have two different subtools. You have a sphere, and now you have a cylinder. To the right of them, you'll see an eyeball. If you turn both the eyeballs on, they're now both visible. If you turn off one, you'll see the cylinder. If you turn off the other and click on the sphere, you'll see that the sphere is visible, since that is the currently selected subtool, but the cylinder is not, because it has not been turned on. Okay. This would be a good place to go and talk about moving or translating objects inside of ZBrush. So actually what I'm going to do is turn off my dynamic perspective, because I feel like that kind of gets things a little weird for me when I'm trying to move them. So if I want to move anything inside of ZBrush, it's really, really similar now, or more so nowadays than it has been in previous ZBrush releases to Maya. It actually uses the same Q, W, E, and R hotkeys to move, rotate, scale, and then go back to your drawing tools. So again, it's Q, W, E, and R. So Q is drawing, W is moving, E is scaling, and then R is rotate. Although to be fair, you really don't need to hit any more than just W, because that actually opens up what's called the Gizmo tool, and which is this button right here, Gizmo 3D. Turn it on or off if you want. And this thing is a really nice little tool. It allows you to rotate, translate, and scale an object at the same time. So there's a tool in Maya that allows you to do that also. So it's basically the same thing. And it was kind of a wonky little tool when I first started using it, but it's pretty cool. I love this thing. They used to have this tool before that were these handles that you would have to like draw out and move objects around with, and like it was hard for anyone to learn how to use it. And by the time you got used to it, it's hard to explain to people how to use it. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I'll go back to it now and then, just simply because the handles can kind of do some things that the Gizmo can't do, but in general, the Gizmo is better. So really easy. You can just move an object up if you want to. If you want to switch your subtool really quickly, hold down Alt and click on the subtool you want to move to. Okay, and then you can turn on the sphere real quick. So you'll see that this one highlights where the sphere goes gray. And then if I go back, hold down Alt, click on the sphere, it actually switches back over. And you'll see over here, it actually does switch back and forth. So holding down Alt and left clicking on a subtool will just switch back and forth. Okay, it's really super duper easy. Alrighty. So, like I said, you can move it. You have this, these four corner bits right here, which basically move the object in relation to the camera. So if I move it here, it's going to basically just move it up, down, left, and right. But then you'll see if I move it this way, if I move the camera around, it's still moving up, down, left, and right, but it's moving it in a different direction in relation to the original object, to the cylinder. So be a little, cognizant of where your camera is sitting, okay? If you want to move just in, the direction of X, Y, and Z, you have your manipulators right here, which work in exactly the same way that they do in Maya. You have the 3 scaling tools right here for X, Y, and Z. And then you can do it uniformly by just going into the center box and scaling from there. So that's pretty cool too. All right. So, and when you're ready to go back into sculpting, you can either hit Q or go back to draw and click on draw. All right. If you do accidentally hit edit, it just gave me a warning there, but you'll notice that it turns off. And then if I try to sculpt on anything, I just get this. So this is going back into drawing mode. It's kind of funky. I'll be honest, I've been doing this for 10 years and I don't know exactly why ZBrush does this. There's a reason for it, I'm sure. I've never really found a practical use for it. Maybe it's good for like mocking up ideas, but they have basically a 2D drawing canvas thing that is this. But if you want to get rid of this and just go back to regular sculpting, hit edit and then hold down. You'll notice that like nothing is, you'll see the only thing that really is live is this sphere and actually this cylinder. We need to get rid of all this other crap that's here. So I'm going to hit Control N, and that actually clears the canvas. So now we're good to go. Okay. It's weird. Just be aware of it. Someone's going to ask me this question, and that's exactly how you get rid of it. It's just going to be Control N as in Nancy, and that'll clear anything off the canvas that is not something we need, or is not something that's editable at the point in time. Okay. If you want to delete a subtool, we can go to delete. It'll ask you, are you sure? Say okay. And if you want to rename it, you can click rename, give it a new name. You can duplicate a subtool if you want to. So now we have 2 copies of this on 2 different subtools, which is cool. We can, that's useful. If you want to, kind of a fun fact, if you want to make a duplicate of an object within the same subtool, so if I want like this subtool right here to have 2 cylinders, I can actually just hold down Control and click and drag with my move manipulator. And you'll see now I have 2 of them. And they're actually in the same subtool. Now one of these is gray, and I can't actually change anything on it. And this is what we call masking. This is masked out. And it's basically the same thing as masking something out in Photoshop to where we can't edit it. But if you want to edit this again, hold down Control. You'll see it'll turn yellow. It'll say mask. I'm going to Control swipe with the left mouse button, and boom. Now I can edit this. We'll get into this more when we move into sculpting, but just be aware of masking, and it is a thing. Append, you can add more stuff in, as we've already talked about. Duplicating, we've already talked about. Deleting, we've already talked about. If you want to split a subtool that has multiple objects, we can do that. Depending on if you want to split to parts, we can click that. It'll ask us, are you sure? We say yes. So now this and this are 2 different subtools. Now we have 3 subtools. If you want to merge objects into a singular subtool, I can click on merge. And I can do that a couple times, clicking OK. You'll see now this is all one singular subtool. You'll see the sculpting transitions from object to object. Pretty cool. We have Boolean here. This is a way that we can basically attach objects to each other. We will have a project that is specific to Booleaning. So I will talk about Booleaning once we get to that point. We have a geometry section down here. This is a really useful palette, so you're going to need to get to know this one. I'm sure you've noticed that, you know, as I'm sculpting, these are really low resolution cylinders, and so if we want to ever obtain higher resolution, we can hit this word divide, this button, and it actually will subdivide the model into a smoother version of that model. So right now we are sitting at about 1446 active points. So that's active, I believe active vertices is what ZBrush is counting, not actually faces. So if I go to divide, you'll see that quadruples. So basically just subdivided everything one time. And so now instead of it being 1446, it's now 5958, which should be about 4 times what, you know, the previous number is. And then the cool thing is that once I start sculpting on this, you'll see that the line work is distinctly more detailed. It's sharper, it's much crisper. It's still pixelated, but it's better than it was before. You'll see here we also have 2 SDiv, and now we have a slider. So we can actually actively go up and down in our subdivisions. So you'll see as we go down, it gets, you know, a little bit blockier. If we go up, it, you know, re-subdivides, and now we can see more of that detail. If we hit divide again, it's going to go to subdivision 3. You'll see it kind of smooths everything out. And if I add in a new stroke, a whole lot sharper. We will get into sculpting in the millions of polys, and so fully expect us to be doing that. I know some people kind of seem to be afraid of that for some reason, but this is how we get high resolution detail, is we use, you know, high poly models. So you'll see as we go up and up, we're just getting just crisper and crisper line work, which is pretty cool. So if I go like to this chisel, you'll see that's a pretty sharp line, pretty sharp cut, but we just could not get that level of detail, obviously, from the lowest resolution model that we have here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and we do have an option here for deleting lower and deleting higher subdivision levels. I'm going to go ahead and delete the lower ones because what I'm going to be doing next is we're going to be going over dynameshing. So dynameshing is basically allowing us, I use this to construct mannequins when I'm doing characters. It allows us to basically take models and kind of like glue them together in a way. It re-topologizes, it remeshes the model, and it redistributes faces across the entire surface of the model. And so if there's 2 intersecting meshes, it will delete the intersecting parts and then have a contiguous skin across the 2 models. So for example, I'm going to go and grab, this, you know, called marshmallow, this marshmallow and this one. I'm going to basically shove them into this marshmallow right here, and then we'll run a dynamesh to where these are no longer going to be 3 distinct meshes. It'll be 1 contiguous mesh. Okay. And by the way, contiguous, in case you haven't heard that word before, it's just meaning an unbroken surface. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down Control, and you'll see it goes back to mask. I'm going to click and drag and mask over this first marshmallow, okay? I can't actually do anything to the marshmallow, but what I can do is hold down Control, click, and you'll see it actually inverts the mask. I'm gonna hold down W, or I'm gonna press W, I'm sorry, and that's gonna give me my move tool. Now my move tool is down here. I need it up here. I have two options. One is I can click this little button, looks kind of like a my location symbol, like a pin drop on Google Maps, and that will move it to wherever the unmasked center, actually it'll say it, unmasked mesh center right there. Or I can hold down Alt, and you'll see this little padlock actually unlocks. What happens is when I do that, then I can move the manipulator tool, the gizmo. But if I don't, if I release that, it actually allows me to move the mesh. In fact, I can actually click and unlock it manually if I want to. So all I'm gonna do is go ahead and just kind of move the marshmallow, just kind of stick it in a little bit right there. And then I'm gonna go and hold down Control, swipe, and then release my mask. I'm gonna do the same thing that I just did, mask off this marshmallow down here, invert, and you'll see that the manipulator just moved down to here. You'll notice that it's still in that rotated orientation that we had when we rotated this marshmallow. If you want to change that, you can hold down Alt and get it as level as you want, or you can hold down Alt and click Reset Orientation, and it'll automatically do that for you. I'm going to go ahead and grab that marshmallow, pull it up to there to where it's intersecting, and I'm going to go and release my mask. So now these are all intersecting, but these are still technically separate meshes. Nothing has been changed or anything, but I do want to go ahead and make this one contiguous mesh. So I'm going to go to Dynamesh. I'm going to click Dynamesh. And so what will happen, you'll see that it went from separate meshes to one mesh. Now it did drop in the resolution a bit. You'll see right here was his active points. It went down from 380,000 to 163,000, okay? We can up the resolution on here if we want to. So if I go back, up that resolution, hit Dynamesh again, it'll go from 380,000 to 2.5 million. So we kept the same level of detail and quadrupled the amount of faces, or actually over quadrupled. Octupled? I don't know. I teach art, not math, but you get the idea. So now these are one contiguous mesh, okay? So I think that'll be good for our first video as a introduction to ZBrush. I will finish this off by showing you how to save out a Z-tool because you guys need to be able to save this stuff. For you guys to turn in your work to me, I need you to save it as a .ztl, a Z-tool file. That is going to be the only format I'm going to accept unless I tell you differently, okay? So in order to do this, you need to go up to Save As, and you're going to make sure it says Save As Type .ztl, and you're going to give it a name. Now, it should be last name underscore first name, class, and assignment name, so make sure you do that, and then you can save it out. You'll notice, if you hit just Control-S, it looks like it's giving you the same thing, but it's not. This is going to be saving out as a ZPR file. This is a Z project file. This is kind of similar to the Z tool, but what it does is it packages up every single subtool that you have open, or every single Z tool that you have open currently. So right now we have, instead of just the marshmallows, we have a star, we have a human head, we have a sphere, and we have a cylinder. So it actually packages those all up. So when I open it, it shows me all of your other stuff, your other files that you have open. I don't need to know that. I don't need to see that. It keeps, if you save it as a ZTL file, it's going to keep the file size smaller. So when we get into our more advanced models, you will be kind of jumping between different Z tools over here. And so you may honestly have a Z project file that could be, you know, 4 or 5 gigabytes in size. I don't need that. I just need the Z tool that you're going to be turning in. Okay. But a Z project file is useful if you're doing, you know, a lot of different parts, like say robots and stuff like that. But anyway, just to be clear, go up here, save as .ztl, and you're good to go. Okay. So next video is going to be me actually sculpting something. So anyway, yeah, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask me in class. At this point, we should be having classes, or send me an email or ask me a question over the Zoom call that we should be in currently, or go on Discord and ask me questions there if you need to. So yeah. All right, guys, see you in the next video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell.